Baseball is just a teaching tool. Baseball's a mechanism. Baseball is what enables me to scratch my itch to tell stories. My favorite thing in baseball is to interview the guy that just made it to the big league and the dream, like I finally made it to my dream and I get to be a part of telling that story. The superstar part's easy. It's the little guy that's had to scrap and claw his way. I love to be the guy that gets to take people places. If a terrorist attack broke out somewhere near where I was at while everybody was running away, but I'm the guy that's going to want to go document all of it and tell people about it. I want to be the one to share everything with everyone. I told my wife and kids as they got old enough at a certain point, like, you could look at whatever you want and any comments or whatever, but you're not allowed to.
Welcome back, everybody, to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here. We like to have the real, raw conversations with some of the most influential and impactful people on this planet, right? Some of them are very well known. Some of them you maybe have never heard of, but I don't measure influence and impact just based on following and size. However, we're here today with somebody who has been 30 years working in an industry that's given him a significant presence, particularly in one city. He's worked in professional baseball as a television broadcaster for over 30 years, and he has his own brand just because of that. But in this last decade or so, he's also shifted a lot of his focus and used a lot of his wisdom running alongside some of the top performers in that sport in the world. And yet he is able to distill down leadership and motivation and perspective because of his collective stories and experiences. He lives his life in a way to impact others and uses all of his time when he's not working right alongside the Kansas City Royals to ensure that he's not only present with his family, but present with the impact that he's capable of having. So, Joel, brother, I'm excited to have you here today, my friend.
Brian, it's so good to be with you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the intro.
Yeah, dude. Well, it's been a minute since we talked, but I know that in the couple of interactions that we've had, I felt a real raw connection with you. I could feel how grounded you were, how much heart there was in the work that you do, but also in the work that you do beyond what you're known for, right? And it's something that I just have always felt, and I've enjoyed our couple of conversations and my chance on your show. You know, the only question I ask everybody outside of however I introduce you, and whatever I've said about you and what you do is, Joel, who are you in your words?
I think that I am just an everyday guy with a little bit of an abnormal and kick-ass job. You know, I mean, if you're a sports fan, there's a good chance that you want to have the job that I have or would love to swap places at some point. And I don't take that lightly because I'm the guy that always wanted to do this and I'm doing it. But I think the weird thing about it is then people have a perception of you of maybe being something that you're not or maybe being something more than you are. And I don't mean to demean myself, but you know, when you talk about having a good raw connection, it's not like you and I know each other that well, but I think we share a joint opinion here. I feel like I know you well. I feel like I have a good bond with you. And so that would lead to, in terms of who am I? And this is always a really strange thing to say because it's counterintuitive or opposite of what I'm going to say, but I think I'm just an authentic guy. That's important to me. I'm an authentic, humble guy, but I'm now an authentic, humble guy telling you that I'm authentic and humble, which seems a little bit of an oxymoron, but that's it. Like, I'm in this world that can be perceived as being fake, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I want you to jump right to that last piece of what you said. What do you think about that world gives the perception that it could be perceived as fake?
Well, I think that television, entertainment, I don't know if music would necessarily fall in this. I mean, it's all performative, right? And so whether you're a sports broadcaster or you're in theater or even on the news, whatever it is, like you are performing to some extent. And I believe that people watch us as an escape, as a distraction. And the reason why sports fans, in part, the reason why sports fans can be so irrational, and they're irrational, that's not a knock on sports fans. If anything, I'm the anti-sports fan. Having grown up a diehard sports fan, it's business to me. My job is being rational. Now, if I were the talk show host, if I were the columnist that was paid to stir it up, that's a different story. Also probably doesn't fit who I am. But I'm a storyteller. I love to take people places that they don't get to go. There's distraction to that. And so it's not necessarily real. Right? I mean, I want to give them the real everything that is going on, but it's coming from a world where people are trying to escape maybe paying their bills or a problem at home or being stationed overseas or being in a hospital bed. And what do they do to distract themselves from that? They turn on the game, and it's entertainment, and they want to live on the highs and lows and the wins and losses in an irrational way because it takes them away from what's real. And so I could be real in this sometimes perceived fake world, but I think sometimes you have to, maybe you don't have to, but it's important to me to convince people that I'm just your neighbor. I'm a guy that you can trust. And so I think that there's this sort of slippery slope between giving them that escape, remembering that when a team is terrible or they're going through a bad stretch, that they're still tuning in for some type of an escape. And so to me, the slippery slope or the challenge is, how do you still make that real? And to me, that's just being yourself.
Yeah. I love the ability for you to be able to just highlight the dichotomy between recognizing that you're authentic and humble, but the fact that you say it sometimes can also feel like you're then trying to convince somebody of something, right? And what's interesting about that is like, I don't even question that with who you are. And yet it's an interesting dynamic because so many people, myself included, right, who operated for some reason with shame or being overlooked or not being believed or not being understood, right? Like also have a really difficult time stepping into and owning the parts that are real as if we can do it without boasting. And, even listening to the way that you talk about it, it is performance. And we're going to go deeper on performance in a second. But what's interesting is you are authentic and humble, but even through the nature of knowing what you know about your industry and all of the perceptions, as well as the awareness for what people are using this for in their lives, you even said at the end there, the language, which was, I feel like I'm consistently trying to convince people that this is real and accessible, right? And so it is real and accessible, yet you still feel the need to convince, yet that's also a full acceptance of just the performance that it is, which I realize I just crammed a whole bunch of ideas into like a really roundabout thought. But, when you are in a position where you're real and authentic, that you can be humble and you are humble, and yet you still feel that you need to convince people of that. Talk about that dynamic, because it's not that you feel you need to prove you're somebody that you're not. It's that you're overcoming all of the preconceived notions that are wrapped in the broader narrative of this sport and this job that you have.
Yeah. And I don't know if I'm aware that I'm doing it all the time. I mean, if I watch some of my stuff back, and I'll watch some, not a lot. I've done this so long. It's not that I can't get better. I actually find that anytime I watch it back, I do get better. I can only see so much of me.
I understand that. I understand that.
It just, I don't know, but I guess it's important for me. Like I work hard without having to think about it, but I work hard every day to just try to be real, to just try to be me. And I think it was always that way, but I think that in the past when I was young, it was out of insecurity. It was a lot of comparison. I mean, we all, to some extent or another, play the comparison game and the imposter syndrome and all of that. In my profession of broadcasting, and speaking for that matter as a speaker too, like it's so subjective. Right? And you may love me and your neighbor may think I'm the worst broadcaster they've ever seen. And,
right.
Hopefully it's more greatest ever than worst, but you're going to get all of it and probably a lot in the middle. I don't worry so much about the other broadcasters anymore. I mean, that ate me up when I was younger, and I'm not as good as them. I'm not as good as them. And now I'm just like, it doesn't matter. Like, I know I'm good enough to do what I do, and I'm very confident in doing what I do. And I take a lot of joy in the familiarity of it all.
Yeah.
That after 6 months of an off season, I could jump right back on like it was just yesterday. And there are no nerves, or if there are any butterflies on day one, it's just because it's the start. Yeah. There's so much comfort in this subjective world of knowing how to do what I do, and knowing that it's good enough, and that I can handle anything on live television, any situation. Throw me breaking news, throw me tragedy, throw me the coolest thing ever. Nothing ever goes as planned. I enjoy that, and I have confidence in that. But there's still that piece of like, all these people that are going to come up and say, hey, we love your work. Hey, you're part of the family. Hey, that's great. I mean, I think that means they trust me. But what I want them to know, what I don't, I guess, like, and maybe more so than anything is it's uncomfortable, is when people start to act or treat you as something that you're not. And it's never meant in a demeaning way or in anything bad. Yeah, it's just like, I mean, I think about that all the time. Fill in the blank. If you were to walk down the street and suddenly stumble upon your favorite musician or your favorite actor, or that one person that you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I would do if I met that person. Well, I'm not that guy. But yet I understand that I might be for some people. And so I feel like I always want them to feel around me like my friends and my family would. Like I want them to give me crap. I want them to be like, all right, like the Will Ferrell, I'm a really big deal. Like I want to be able to say that to them, just dripping of sarcasm, because I'm not, yet I understand the job that I have is a really big deal because of what I said before, because of what it provides for people in their lives. And so it is that dichotomy again. And look, you can't control what people think about you. I'm not trying to make everybody love me. That is the furthest thing from the truth. I get it. I mean, I gave up on that a long time ago, and we all should give up on that a long time ago, and we get to that point. But I just want people to have a fair read on me of whether you like me or don't like me, that I'm authentic and I'm a real person.
Yeah. And I think the other reality to that's hard after so many years of recognizing the comparison, right? Recognizing the piece that you're so clear on as well, which is, look, I learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, as have many high performers in any field and industry, right? Which means that it was always dependent upon what we did, right? Not necessarily who we were. And even when you're establishing a 30-year career in this, right? Or those early years of shame and comparison and feeling like you're not always going to be good enough, yet you are still in a very subjective role, which is judged based on, is your personality trusted and liked, right? And so there's like this acknowledgement and acceptance of you being authentic and real, while still recognizing that to some degree, your job and livelihood depends on likability and relatability. And that's a very difficult thing to center in. I appreciate how you spoke about it, Joel. You looked like you were about to jump in and say something. I was going to go. What were you going to respond to?
Just along those lines, I've wondered this for many, many years, that would I, when I was younger, I had specific destinations. I wanted to get to either Chicago, where I grew up from 13 on, Philadelphia, where I grew up before 13. Those are two big markets to be able to cover sports in those cities, or maybe ESPN and SportsCenter. And I find myself now having no interest in any of those because of the 17, now 18th season in Kansas City. And you don't romanticize about being in a middle-sized market or well, I didn't romanticize about any of this because I didn't know that pregame shows and postgame shows existed, or podcasts and all these other things that I do. And so there's another message there about, whatever you're dreaming of, understand that what you're dreaming of may not exist yet. And so, but I ended up in the career I wanted to, but I thought it would be the big market. And there came a certain point where I realized I love where I'm at. And I may get to do more here than I would in another place, meaning I don't have to share responsibilities with anybody else. There's no other pre and post game show host. There's no other in-game reporter. Right. We don't have NHL and NBA, so I could do all these things. But I've wondered to this whole discussion, would the way I go about things play in LA or New York or Chicago or somewhere like that? Because here where I'm at in a market size of Kansas City, yes, still ratings and people watching matter, but I feel like in those bigger cities, that's the number one thing. And if you don't get it, they move on to somebody else. And here I feel like it's so much more about relationships and being in the community and being a part of it. And so then I could go out there and be who I am, which means that to me, everything is about relationships and trust. So yes, you don't need to think that I'm the best. Hopefully you don't think I'm the worst. But do you respect me for the relationships and the trust that I'm able to build? That's what I talk about. And for me, like, I've seen players come and go. I mean, they've all come and gone. There's no one here that was here when I got here. They might be in a different role in a front office or in management now. But those relationships with those players, the coaches, the front office, ownership, it's not so much, hey, we love Joel or we want to hang out with Joel. I'm not looking to hang out. Do they respect me? That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. When they go and they tell other players, or they say to me after retirement, you were my favorite because of the way, how respectful you were, or how fair you were. Or I hear from players, moms and dads or relatives or spouses or whatever, that say, hey, appreciate, the way you treat everybody and how fair you are and honest and all those type of things. That to me is what matters more than anything.
Yeah, of course.
And that's what's kept me here, I believe. That work ethic, the way you treat people. And I don't know if that would happen in the bigger market.
But I think it's also an evolution of priorities, right?
Yeah,
and focus and, your wisdom singing through, because the other part of what I was saying before, and it ties into even what you just spoke to, is your comment around after 30 years, it's like muscle memory for you. It's there, it's ingrained, and there's no question, even subjectively, as to how good and how powerful and how successful you have had, because how many people have lasted for 30 years in professional sports broadcasting? Right.
Yeah,
it's not a common thing even to have that kind of tenure. And so that's, I think, what I'd like you to talk about just for a second is what did you hope it would become? And what have been the shifts in expectations over this 30-year successful career that have had shifting priorities?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I don't know if it's, hitting the round number of 30. Well, whatever that means, it seems like it is a big number.
It's a big deal.
So I thought about it in these terms. When I got into this, it was 1994. My first job, I started October 1994. So about 5 months after graduating from college. And it was a miracle just to get in. And I busted the door down. I mean, I got in because I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And that's not my style. I mean, I'm not, again, I'm a big picture, long game, build relationships kind of guy. But I just, all the rejections early on, I realized real quickly that I'm never going to get in. Like, I'm no better than anyone else. That, by the way, that wasn't imposter syndrome. I wasn't, what 22-year-old is.
Right.
And so I had to differentiate myself, and I started knocking on doors, and I got in. And so I mention all of that because, there are a lot of lessons of how to break that door down in a profession where the odds are not quite like winning the lottery, but pretty close to it. And so I don't know that what I've thought about lately is, would the 22-year-old me, like, what were the goals? The goals were eventually to get to Philadelphia or Chicago or Sports Center or somewhere big like that. And the goals changed over time, and we could certainly talk about that. But I don't know that I sat there and thought, I want to be in this for 30 years or X amount of years. All I thought about every step of the way until I got to Kansas City, and far enough into Kansas City where I realized I was where I wanted to be, is that I believe every step of the way from the moment I got out of college looking for the first job until I got to Kansas City was always about the next step. It was never about how long. All it was about was the destination. And we hear so much now with the younger generation, and I think it's a great thing. You hear them talk so much about being grounded, being present. It's about the journey, not the destination. I didn't understand any of that. I could not have possibly appreciated the journey.
I didn't know that language back then.
Different language, but it was all about the hard work. The only chance I have is to outwork everybody else, because I don't think I'm as good as everybody else. And eventually maybe I did become as good as everybody else, but I definitely was not at the time. I mean, that is not looking back with imposter syndrome. That is saying, like, my desire and passion was as good, if not better than anyone else's, but my skill and all of that had a long ways to go. So I don't think that it was possible for me to think about a 30-year career. All I know is that now, 30 years, I don't think I felt this way at 20, maybe 25. We were around pandemic time, so I don't think my mind was there. I just think now, and especially in this world that we're living in, where the medium is changing, and so much is moving to digital, and the world of streaming, and all of these things, that I'm amazed now at what I know, and that you and I could have a conversation like this on a podcast when none of that existed when I started. And so I'm energized by the constantly changing landscape. I'm energized by the fact that when I got into this business as a 20-something-year-old, I was covering 20-something-year-old athletes. And then I was a 30-something covering 20-somethings, and then a 40-something. And now I'm old enough to be their dad. And some of them look at you with a little bit of wisdom, but for the most part, they look at you like all athletes do, and with a little bit of skepticism. And the goal becomes building the trust and the relationship. And then you get the fruits of that labor, show on TV and with your reputation and your content. I never thought like that before, right? It was just survival. And so to me, I have no idea whether I'll do this another year or 10 years or 20 years. They'll tell me when I'm done. And so the fact that they haven't told me that yet is to me a little bit of a miracle and I guess a bit of a badge of honor too.
Yeah, you've like dropped all these little glimmers of wisdom into every single answer, and one of the things that jumped out at me there was when you said that I was far enough into Kansas City to finally realize it's where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Right. And how so many times, right, like we may actually be exactly where we want to be, but we may be so focused on another destination that we don't even realize it. And I just think there's a lot of wisdom in even what you just said there. Joel, I want to redirect the conversation a different direction for a minute. And we're going to come back to some of this because I want to go deeper. But, you know, the other side of being 30 years as a television broadcaster in a sport that has so many games, that's traveling, that's doing all these different components is you're on the road a lot, right? You're doing a lot of variety of different things to support the team. And so who are you behind the work and the game? And who are those in your life that you've had to be communicative with to bridge those relationships when you're on the road a decent amount for at least half the year?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's a very intuitive question because I think that most people like this profession is one of performance entertainment distraction. And so people don't think about that. And I don't begrudge them for not thinking about it, but that in itself can present some challenges when, you know, over the years, I'd go on the road and we're on the road typically for 7 days at a time, sometimes 10 days. And then you have a wife at home with 2 younger kids at the time. And, you know, she's struggling to get everybody where they need to go and run her own life and all these type of things as a single parent with a husband that pops in every other week, but he's really not popping in because when I get home, I got to still go to the stadium. You know, I'm home. I'm in my bed. I'm in our bed, but you know, there's a good chance that the kids are going to school before I wake up, or I'm going to wake up really tired just to make sure that I take them to school and have that time with them for a few minutes. And then by the time you get home at night, they're sleeping. And then, oh, by the way, while you're gone on the road, everybody at whatever sports practice or theater practice or whatever is going on with the kids, the one question they have for your wife is, hey, how about the Royals? Hey, what's going on with the team? And you know, and she loves the Royals in baseball, but it's like nobody would ever ask, how are you doing? And I don't know if she'd want me saying all this, but that is the plight of any spouse for anyone working in my profession. And I don't just mean on TV. I mean the players. It's so easy to sit there and say, oh, well, they're making all that money. I'm not, by the way, but you know, they're the ones making the millions. Yeah. And it's an amazing life. And they've got a little extra money to be able to maybe afford the nanny or the babysitter or the whatever. But the reality of it is they're living this very isolated, different life, and everybody wants to learn about it for not the wrong reasons, but the reasons that aren't really you're not feeling it in the moment. So I think that we thankfully, fortunately, I mean, Brian, I say it this way in the simplest terms in my profession. There are 3 outcomes for anyone with a family, or you know, with a spouse or a significant other. You either get out of the profession, you get divorced, or you figure it out. And so when I talk about the miracle of 30 years, and my wife and I have been married for 25 and together for close to 28, the miracle really is that we figured it out.
Yeah.
And when I say we, it is we, but that all starts with her. And I know that can sometimes sound like lip service, but inevitably, and this is Murphy's Law, and this isn't me, this is everyone. When something goes wrong, One of my broadcast partners the other day, who is my age but has younger kids, and a bunch of them, when one of them got bit by something outside that might need a rabies shot, and the kid's freaking out over the thought of having shots, and the mom's got a million things going on that day, his wife and all that, and he makes the comment to me like, it only ever happens when we're on the road. That is so Murphy's Law. There's a leak in the roof. There's a something with the kid. This is sick, on and on and on. The fact that we figured that out, the fact that she figured it out, like she said to me the other day, I get home from a 10-day road trip and she's like, I don't know that I could have ever survived this when the kids were younger. Well, I'm like, well, you did. But I went on this road trip early in the season, and by the end, I'm like, my goodness, that was long. But it was like there was no panic. We just know how to do this the way I know how to do a show and jump in front of a camera. And so I think none of this happens without her support, but not just her support, the kids. Like the kids understand this is our rhythm. There's no such thing as a weekend. There's no such thing as a 9 to 5. And I wouldn't trade it personally because it's what I know and love. But I wouldn't know and love it so much if I didn't have that support. It starts with the three of them. My wife, my two kids both in college now. And so everybody's got their own freedom. We're all very, very independent. But this is not for someone that needs that spouse or that someone with them every single moment of the day. And that's fine too. Thankfully that is not us. But that's been the biggest challenge.
Well, I appreciate your honesty and leaning right into that. There's a lot that goes into your whole point, and you said it even before, living life like just for what's next, right? I mean, even down to the fact of my wife and I have been very honest with our kids, and we've thought about this. Like, we never even thought about having kids as an option. It was just what was next, right? It was like, of course we're going to have kids. And by the way, we have them, we love them. We would never change it now that we do. And that is so abundantly clear, but we never even considered the alternative.
Same.
Right? Which is also interesting. And so I appreciate your ability to go into this, but you did start out in a way that you say and are very honest. Look, there's no imposter syndrome, but there's elements that I just wasn't as talented maybe, but I had more passion. I had more drive. So why don't we go back a little bit further? What was it about your life, your early life experiences that got you interested in the path that you've now lived successfully for 30 years? What interested you in going down the path of broadcasting and putting yourself up to all this subjective ridicule as well that can exist in the industry of performance?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever thought that part through well enough. And then once you're in it, you just got to deal with it. And I guess same thing if you can't handle it, and then the social media world evolved and I was very active on there. Less so now. It just seems sometimes like a time suck. But I think that I told my wife and kids as they got old enough at a certain point, like, you could look at whatever you want, any comments or whatever, but you're not allowed to come back to me and tell me the negative things people are saying unless it endangers our family, my reputation, and endangering my reputation doesn't mean you suck. It just means like is someone out there potentially trying to hurt you.
Right.
And otherwise I don't need to know it. And I tell that to all of our young players, not that I'm not their advisor, but if it comes up, I'll say, because all their moms are looking or their dads are looking. And I'm like, that's fine as long as I can handle it because it's a nasty place out there. I didn't sign up for any of that. It's what comes with it. But if I go back to the young me, and I love this, I'll give away a little bit, but I usually go on stage when I'm doing my keynotes in the off season, some in season, and I'll start something along the lines of, I want to take you back to South Valley Elementary School outside of Philadelphia and in the suburb of Philadelphia, New Jersey. And Mrs. Dunwoody, my first and second grade teacher, was regularly calling home to complain to my parents. What was she complaining to my parents about? That young Joel was disrupting class again by giving updates on the previous night's Philadelphia Phillies baseball game. And so there were early signs that I wanted to do this at 7 or 8 years old. And I don't know at what point it said, I want to do that. I just know that I could vividly remember turning the mute button. I don't know if it was a mute button, turning the knob down to no volume and watching a game with notes that I prepared and calling the action like I was the announcer.
I love that.
At my parents' house. So I knew I wanted to do it at an early age. Where did it come from? To me, two things: an absolute love of sports, while also understanding I wasn't that good, mediocre at best. I was never going to get a college scholarship to do anything or anything like that. So I knew I wanted to do this, certainly as early as middle school, because when we moved to Chicago when I was in 8th grade, one of my two closest friends, who went on to work for Oprah and now has his own production company, he would be behind the camera and I would be in front, or sometimes we'd both be in front. We were doing pretend newscasts and we were doing pretend DJing, essentially like early versions of mixtapes that we were the DJs on. So this is what I did for fun. This is what I wanted to do. And then the other piece is that, and it still applies today, I love to be the guy that gets to take people places. And so could I have been a war correspondent? I think I could have. I'd be a little bit scared, but like if a terrorist attack broke out somewhere near where I was at while everybody was running away, I'm not the guy that's going to run in and try to, shoot up the bad guys. I don't have that in me, but I'm the guy that's going to want to go document all of it and tell people about it. It doesn't mean I enjoy it. It just means I want to be the one to share everything with everyone. And so that to me is something that I still have a lot of joy in every single day.
I really appreciate that. I'm surprised that your synchronized swimming show in high school didn't detract your professional career, though.
Listen, I could call that one of the most embarrassing things I've ever done, but it came from a good place. I was never gonna. I had two bouts with there were episodes, I don't know, instances that involved swimming pools of things I chose to do that I should not have been doing. One, because I'm not, I could swim. It's not, but I'm not like, I think back to the old Saturday Night Live with, I think it was Martin Short and Christopher Guest, where they were doing the synchronized swimming. And Martin Short's like, I'm not a very good swimmer. And he's like trying out to be in the like Olympic synchronized swimming. I wasn't quite that bad, but I went out my senior year for the water polo team. They had one in Chicago. That's a very, I think, West Coast California thing. I went out for it because I was a goalie on the soccer team, and I thought, well, I could just do that for, I could be the goalie for the water polo team. And I went out, and I think I quit after 3 days because getting up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning to jump in a swimming pool wasn't going to happen. The other one was that my high school in Chicago had a synchronized swimming show every year. It was a big deal, and it was mostly the girls and a handful of boys from the swimming team, and they needed a bunch of extras. And so I signed up with a couple of other my friends, including the guy that went on to work for Oprah, with one goal in mind, and only one goal was to meet girls. That's all it was. And so I was in like 2 routines. One of them involved doing something creative off of the diving board and some kind of number, and mine was to do the greatest, most painful belly flop of all time. And I got everybody in the crowd going crazy. Anyway, that was my synchronized swimming career.
Man, I love that a lot. A big theme that has really kind of come into play the whole conversation, and it's not a surprise because it's who you are, is the importance of storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to come back to the topic we were talking about just a little bit, and also through the lens of story, right? You talked in detail and with great honor with the choices that you and your wife have made in communication, right? With the grace that your kids showed you in understanding and supporting and allowing you to kind of do these things. You also are somebody who put in a lot of effort to figure it out, mm-hmm. right? And yet there's lots of stories that we can tell ourselves that are positive, lots of stories we can tell ourselves that are negative. If you were to tell the story of how you were able to bring your kids into your world and also be a part of theirs in using stories and relatability and presence, what's the story you would tell for your journey as a father so far?
That's a great question. All your questions are good. That's why I love this conversation, because it's so deep thinking, and by no means have you stumped me on this one, but I think I find myself trying to come up with a different answer, but I'm going to circle back to what is typically my common theme is, regardless of profession. I mean, my daughter's in theater school right now, and I think ultimately she wants to be an educator in the theater space. And my son wants to do something in sports. I don't think it's going to be in TV, but every now and then he'll show some signs. I'll let both of them figure it out. But I think the common theme to what I do and to whatever they do is it all comes down to people and how you treat people and how you go about your business. And, we have this overused expression in sports. It's not just in sports. It could be in business too, but control the controllable. Like I can't control everybody liking me, but I could certainly control the effort. I could certainly control the way I treat people and the reputation. And I tell people all the time, the breadcrumbs that you leave for everyone, they follow you everywhere. And if you leave enough breadcrumbs that good or bad, the word gets around. And so my kids have never seen me, in the workspace. They come out a lot to games. I've got pictures of them at 2 and 5 years old when we got to Kansas City, hovering over the ledge, watching me on a show. And, now obviously they're more or less all grown up and in college, but I can't think of a time where they would have seen me mistreat anybody. The crew that works behind the scenes, all the people that nobody knows who they are or their roles. Those are the people that are as important, really more important than what I do. I'm the finished product, for better or worse, right? But nobody knows all the work that goes into the audio and the cameras and the lighting and all that type of stuff. And so I think for me, they've seen that I treat all of those men and women the way I would treat our fellow broadcasters, the way I would treat our players, and that everybody matters. And I hope that I've modeled that for them. I think I have, because I watch the way they treat people and they're the same way. And then I think the other piece to it too is they've never known a life without seeing me on TV. So the earliest years was them flipping, whatever cartoons they were watching and me on TV. And they went through all the things that, kids and then teenagers go through of with their parents. And, it's weird, or it's, oh, my dad is this or that or whatever. And they came to a place eventually where this was just normal for them. For a lot of years, it was weird for them, I believe, to have their friends, and now they just kind of laugh at it and they're comfortable with it. It used to be like, they'd be like, hey, Dad, can I have your autograph? And, they're just giving me crap. And not that they don't give me crap anymore, but like this is their normal. Yeah. And with that normal is seeing the things that we're talking about, right? That it's more than just sports. It's not, they grasp everything that I'm saying right now, having lived that life. And I guess like to me, when they come to the stadium, especially my son, because he's in school 45 minutes away, so he can come home. And so he'll go to games. My daughter's up in Chicago, so, she might get to 1 or 2 games a year. But when my son comes in or brings friends from the University of Kansas to a game, he's able to pound his chest a little bit, not in a bragging way, but in a, hey, I get to host you guys and I want to take you guys and share this. He's not bragging about it. I watch the way he goes about his business, but when he comes up and he sees the ushers and they know him and he could give them a handshake and how's it going? And they want to ask him about school. And it's never, do you know who I am? I could come up here. Like, I just like the fact that they have learned how to carry themselves, hopefully by the way that I've modeled things. I don't know that I answered the question, but that's where my mind went.
You know what? I think you did answer the question. It wasn't necessarily a direct line in answering it, but
it never is.
But that's okay, right? Life isn't a direct line. We even talked about that in your career, right? Like that's just how it happens. And so I think you wove in a number of the components that I was, I guess, curious about, right? Is how the connection and the relatability to them. To extend this a little bit further, I have a couple other questions around storytelling. It is, to me, one of the most important things in this world, right? I mean, it's one of the longest standing traditions, and there's all these different beliefs and philosophies in telling stories, and everyone has their own different reasons for why it's important to either share their story, get others to share their story, or understand storytelling in general. You've told stories in over 4 continents. You've been telling stories, both aggregate and micro, in your professional role for 30 years. You've learned the art of storytelling, as well as the ways to highlight the people that are in it and the emotional response that ultimately is connecting it. Why is storytelling and you being the one to share the story with others so important to you? And what have you learned most importantly about your style of telling stories over all of this extensive career that you've got?
I still think it's important to me for the reason, now I don't know the reason behind this, that I mentioned before, that I always want to be the one. And I don't know why. I mean, I'm a talker, although I've become less of one in certain situations. Like I've become very introverted in my way to recharge away from the camera and away from people. That was never the case before. Like I want that quiet time, and then stick me in front of any group and, and tell me to go and I'll go. But I feel like it's, maybe I was born to do it. Like you hear about the superstar, the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James, like they want the ball. They want the shot in the big moment. I'm not that guy for that, but I want to be the one. Like I would like to tell everybody every story, and I think that, but what's changed, evolved with my storytelling over the years is understanding the nuance of it, the when, the where, the how, where to pick the spots. Like you can't tell every single story or nobody's going to listen anymore. And that was a hard thing for me early on. Like I was the kid, or even the adult now, that anything happens, I want to tell anyone and everyone. And it's like, well, eventually, like it doesn't all matter. It's not like, not everything needs to have a story told to it. While at the same time, I understand that everybody has a story to tell. So I think that there's a little something about that too. I think that there's something to me in and not every story's good, by the way, but wanting to find the good in every story, wanting to find the good in every person. And I feel like maybe that's not a new development for me, but it certainly feels like in this day and age and world of divisiveness that little bits of that can go a long ways. I mean, we were in New York on our most recent road trip, and it's Jackie Robinson Day. And here I go, I'm going to storytell for you. But I walk into the visiting clubhouse at Yankee Stadium. The day after is going to be Jackie Robinson Day, April 15th, celebrated through all of baseball. Every player on every team wears number 42 to honor Jackie Robinson, his number. The number's not worn anymore. It's been retired through all of baseball. And I walk up to a young African-American player on the Royals who's been in the big leagues for less than 2 weeks at that point. He's basically there due to an injury. He's a good player, but he's there to be the pinch runner, super fast. And I said, hey, I don't want to take away from your free time, and you may have a lot to do here in New York, but we're going to do a little something on Jackie Robinson tomorrow, and maybe go up to, the old site in Brooklyn or somewhere else. And would you have any interest? I would love to do it. It would be my honor to do it. And we ended up going to Jackie Robinson Park in Harlem. And here I am just strolling through this peaceful park in Harlem on a beautiful day, reflecting about Jackie Robinson, with all these signs of Jackie around there, and this, park that was created in the 30s, renamed in his honor in 1978, not too far from where he broke the color barrier in baseball, with a young African-American ball player who grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, one of the hot spots of civil rights in the history of this country, and a kid that wanted to be there doing this because he felt like it was important. And I'm the guy that gets to bring it to everybody. Like, it doesn't get any better than that. Like that to me is the stuff that gets me up out of bed every day, and I don't need much. And so that to me is where storytelling never gets old. And I think what's changed over the years with it, Brian, is not just understanding and maturing and learning the nuance and when and how and what's right and what's not right, but understanding that the relationships, I keep going back to that, and the people, plus the platform that I have, enable me to be the one to do that.
Yeah.
And not everybody gets that opportunity.
I really enjoyed even being able to get to listen to the little story that you just told, right? About the Jackie Robinson and the younger player and all of the connecting pieces, right? Do I have permission, my friend, to reflect back something to you?
Yeah. Okay.
So the big thing I say to you and to anybody who's listening to this is I don't give two fucks about being right. I care about getting it right. So if this doesn't land, I've got no ego in it. I have nothing to fight or prove. Okay. But you've said now twice on this show that you don't know why it's so important for you to be the one. And the longer we've spoken, the more it feels to me very obvious. And I just want to share it with you in the chances that either it hasn't landed for you this way before, or maybe it hasn't been contemplated or fully owned, and maybe I'm completely off. But it seems to me that you were often overlooked and misunderstood. And that often in your life, even when you were telling your own story, people didn't see the full picture. And I think that there's a big piece of you that knows what it feels like to be misunderstood, even with somebody who has strong communication and storytelling abilities. And therefore, it's very important for you to ensure that everyone else's story gets told in a way that is crystal clear and also contemplates the bigger picture. I think that this is something even that potentially still factors in with you in this current moment. I mean, one of the things that you wrote down on our intake forms, which, as you know, are very, very basic because I don't pre-script questions and I don't do a ton of research on purpose. But even what you taught to your kids, which is, you know, that there's more about life than just baseball, even you trying to build your own brand and you're writing your own story as more than just baseball is something that you're actively focused on right now. So I'm going to shut up for a second, but it seemed to me like I wanted to share that with you as I saw it, at least in the way that I could try to articulate and give you the chance to either reflect on it, respond to it, or reject it, you know?
I don't reject any of it. Let me reflect and respond. I mean, my first thought, I think you're dead on. I don't know that I was ever misunderstood. I think I was usually overlooked. And when you're overlooked, you may in the moment feel like you're misunderstood. But I think that's all right. Why was I overlooked, or was I? And was it just a perceived being overlooked? I don't know, because I still have that in my head at times. And then I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, nobody's overlooking you. Look at what you're doing every single day. So there's something built in there. You know, I'd love to say like legitimately, not that you're trying to get me on the couch, but if we did that, like there's nothing in my childhood that I would look back that should have led to me feeling like I was being overlooked. I mean, I was never the best athlete on any team, except for maybe like my second year of T-ball. I was really good. I think I led the second in the league in home runs. You know, I was like a 6-year-old or 7-year-old. That was pretty big. But you know, I was never going to be the top kid chosen, probably not the last, but I wasn't going to make every single team though. When it got more competitive, I was never going to be the lead this or the lead that. And I think that maybe if that happens long enough, that you start to believe that. So maybe that's what it is. I do think that there is something about me, you know, and I grew up in a loving household with 2 amazing parents, a brother that I fought with all the time, but we get along great now, all these years later. No trauma or anything. I was very lucky. Like I grew up, when I say I grew up a privileged life, in many ways, I mean, it is a good middle-class background, loving house, safe house. A lot of the issues that so many, you know, kids or adults nowadays talk about what they went through. I was lucky. I always thought I didn't have to deal with any of that. And you know, and my parents were alive, are still alive to this day. And I was lucky enough to not lose a grandparent until I was 23 years old. Like I always remember as a kid saying, boy, can this just not happen until I'm old enough to handle it? Like, healthy, all these things. But there's something in my background. Maybe it's like, you know, my grandparents were all immigrants. Everybody's were at some point, you know, and they had to fight tooth and nail for everything that they earned. And I was far enough removed from it, but close enough to have heard the stories. My point, though, Brian, is like I've always loved to, in my storytelling, tell the underdog story.
Yeah.
If you look at my books, there's a lot of underdog stories in there. It's not. I love. My favorite thing in baseball is to interview the guy that just made it to the big leagues.
Of course. And
the dream, like I finally made it to my dream, and I get to be a part of telling that story. The superstar part's easy. It's the little guy that's had to scrap and claw his way. It's why I connect with so many of the Latin American players too, even though my Spanish is terrible, is that I feel like they oftentimes don't have a voice. Can I help be part of that voice? So
wouldn't you say that's a mirror to your own story though, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
right. I mean, like, here's the thing too. When we look back at our lives, this is the thing that I think is interesting because so many people minimize all of the little, even micro moments and psychological and emotional and even generational things that pass through DNA. Right. It doesn't have to be getting your arm ripped off like I had. It doesn't have to be growing up with no money in an abusive household. It doesn't have to be toxic, all the time. It could literally be the way your dad looked at you when you loaded the dishwasher incorrectly when you were 8. And it embedded this belief around, I'm not good enough because I don't do it right. It could be a comparison with a sibling. What I'm trying to suggest is that the reality of it is that I think that you already are telling the whole story and the bigger story beyond baseball. And that's the challenge I give to you as a friend is like, you're telling the underdog story, but yet you've turned yourself from an underdog into a well-known performer. Yeah. And you're bringing others along with you, and yet still trying to break out of the realm of baseball, because that's still only a component of you. And it's only been 6 months of your years for 30 years. It's 15 years of the story, right? And so I think, but what you just hit on is also real. You are an author and you've written in your books. And I want to highlight on that for just a minute, right? Small ball, big results, small ball, big dreams. These are both books that you have. They're underdog stories. The cheeky part of me is like, it's hard to like build the brand as more than just baseball when even your books are baseball themed. Yeah. But that's just like love in that. But give us an insight into the books and the stories and the importance of these, as well as all the other storytelling that you're doing in terms of keynotes and podcasting and other types of work that are creating impact beyond the game.
Well, I think that's been the awakening for me, because it's one thing to love what you do. And I do, and I have, and I really like, not to get overly cheesy about it, but I try in some form or another every day I'm at the ballpark to just, even if it's for a split second, remember, like, let's not take this for granted, because when I walk on the field, whatever field it is, the most perfectly manicured grass with the exception of a few of the turf stadiums, and it's nicer than any lawn you'll ever walk on, and I get to walk on it. And I know all the nooks and crannies of every stadium and the behind the scenes. Like, there's a reason I started doing these TikToks 2 years ago of just taking people down the visiting tunnel from the locker room, the clubhouse, to the dugout. Why did I do that? Because I can't like go do a tell-all in the locker room. That's their private space. Like that'll pretty much ruin every bit of my reputation. And that suddenly looks like you're giving away secrets, even though you're not. But something as simple as just the tunnel, and it took off. Like, I go around the country and people will be like, I watch your TikToks. I'm like, are you a Royals fan? No. What? They just, because I'm taking them somewhere they don't get to go.
You're letting them see something they've only ever envisioned before.
That's right. And so that to me is even more about baseball. Like that to me is everything we just talked about of bringing people. I mean, reflecting back on what you said too, like, if I always was the little guy, by the way, I never felt wronged by that. No, that's not true. Of course I did, but I don't look back and be like, how dare they have disrespected me? Or
there's no resentment or frustration around it, but there's an acknowledgement of you haven't been able to own all of what you are
and earned it all. And so to be able to share a piece of that with others, and I've got my little braggy stuff, like the humble brag. I mean, when we have all these comedians that are well known that you'll know: Jason Sudeikis, Ted Lasso, Paul Rudd, Rob Riggle, Heidi Gardner from SNL, Eric Stone Street from Modern Family, David Koechner from many things, but Anchorman and others. They all grew up here in this area, and so they come back and do a charity thing every year, and I get to do the most unbelievable live organic interview with those guys in the middle of a game every year, and it's just the funniest. It's like, holy crap, I'm sitting there with these celebrities, and it's got to a point now where they all know my name, and they pick on me, and we give each other grief, and it's great, and that's very normal. So there's a little bit of a humble brag in that, but more than anything, it still gets back to, if your observation is right, I think it is. I just hadn't thought of it this way. If this is a reflection, a mirror, and now I'm the little guy that gets to do this, and I get to take people there with me, that's the coolest thing. So if that's the little behind the scenes down the hallway and people like it, don't get me wrong, there's some dopamine effect to it too. Like, wow, look at all 700,000 people wanted to view this TikTok at Fenway Park because it's Fenway Park, or Wrigley Field because these things have been open since, the early 1900s. That's pretty, unbelievable. I don't even remember what you asked. Sorry.
I was asking about some of your books, but but more importantly, and I think you hinted on it with the TikTok piece, but I guess where I'm going with this is what are you attempting to create in terms of impact beyond the game in these works and keynotes and the storytelling that's off the field?
I'm gonna be, this won't get me in trouble, but I'm gonna be really honest with how I got here, and then tell you the beauty of the result, I guess, is that my unanswered question for many years after I came to Kansas City in '08, because before I came to Kansas City, I was a salaried employee everywhere I'd been. And I came here as an independent contractor. What a deal. I'm going to get paid a year's worth of salary in 6 months, and then you can go do whatever you want to do. Mm. And I never figured out the other thing. I just thought it was go find more sports to do. And none of that was all that fulfilling, and none of it was paying all that much either. And a buddy of mine said to me, one off season, end of 2016, what are you up to? What do you do? And I said, I'm speaking to some lawn care and golf course management association next week. He said, do you do a lot of that? I said, not really. And he said, you should, you could start a business. And then everybody told me speakers write books. And I thought, wait, maybe there's something here. And then I had to figure out what I wanted to talk about. Well, I could talk about culture and team building and all these things. But my initial goal for all of this was, hey, there might be another avenue for me to go make some money. And it's a secondary income. And maybe it could be the fallback plan if baseball doesn't ever work out. And for the first time in my life, maybe I'll have something else. So that was the start. That's the honest truth of, hey, maybe I can make a little extra money. And then not only did I fall in love with it to a level I never thought of, that I realized that I like this as much as baseball because, and you already had the observation, it's not all, and don't get me wrong, I love baseball. Baseball is just a teaching tool. Baseball is a mechanism. Baseball is what enables me to scratch my itch to tell stories. And now what happened, Brian, was I started going to the ballpark, and I started going to the ballpark with eyes more wide open, more perceptive, looking for stories that could help people. And what suddenly happened was I realized that this maybe loud or magnified voice that I get to have because I'm on television, because the unique circumstance of having that kind of platform gave me a greater platform through writing my books, through the podcast, through getting on stage, through social media, that was so much bigger than anything I was ever doing before. And it was deeper than, hey, we love your work. Hey, love that interview, or love that Gatorade splash the other night. And now it became, you helped me with this, or you did that, and you inspired me to do this. And so I got into it for I don't want to say the wrong reasons, but I didn't get into it for the reasons that ended up essentially keeping me in this for what I believe will be the rest of my life, is this incredible passion to be able to leverage this storytelling into making people's lives better. That I didn't understand when I signed up for it, so to speak. And now it's what motivates me every day.
By the way, that doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, it's no different than your story in Kansas City, where you had to be there long enough before you realized it's really what you want to do, right? It's the same pattern of you exposed yourself and got reps. Go ahead. You were about to say something.
Well, it's weird too, because in the career of being, if we want to call it overlooked, or this perception of being overlooked, I've always believed it's the same thing with my speaking business right now too. Once people are exposed to it long enough, they get it. But just sight unseen, I'm never going to be the guy. And I think it's the reverse as well. Like I need to be somewhere long enough to be able to achieve that success, and people need to be around me long enough to be able to see what it can do.
Well, I think that's probably true for all humans, by the way. And sometimes that's a really difficult balance and dichotomy. The piece I also want to make sure that I ground really, really clearly, at least in my reflection and intent in asking some of these questions, and also challenging you a little deeper, is it is without any doubt in my mind the gratitude, appreciation, passion, purpose that you have and still derive from the game. Right. So in no way are any of these questions about beyond baseball in any way to diminish all of what it has been and still is and still will be to you, because it's also been a huge outlet and a passion for impact. And so when I ask these questions, again, it's not in any way to say anything bad about the game. In fact, no, it's just that, to what I was saying earlier, it's not the whole story.
That's right.
It's just a part of the story. And it's the story that gets most recognition in your life because of who you are and what you've done and the platforms that you've so successfully put yourself into. But again, just like everybody else, whether it's your favorite celebrity, your favorite athlete, or whatever, there's the person behind what everyone else sees. And all I'm trying to do is bring a little bit of light to that, because I believe that's how you try to live in all of your storytelling, in everything you do every day. Is that true?
100%. And I love the fact that my initial desire to write the book was because I was told that speakers write books and that's how you get speeches. So that's a terrible reason. I ended up starting a podcast instead, which then led to the content and the connections. And you and I aren't having this conversation today if we weren't connected before. And so I've made incredible friends and built this really kick-ass, unbelievable network outside of baseball because the podcast, which then led to both books. Mm-hmm. And now suddenly people say, hey, your book really inspired me to do this and that. And it's like, that's why I believe my second book, I believe, was better than the first one because I understood it better, not the writing so much or the process, but just what it could do and what would work. And so it's been so much more fulfilling. Look, if all I had was the baseball, it'd be great, but I needed more. There was going to come a certain point where I needed more and I need it for it to be purpose. I'm going to share this really, really quick one with you because this is what baseball has done now for me. Some of the transformation happened my first year when I came to Kansas City. I came from St. Louis where they were winning. They're losing every night. I get pulled aside by a guy by the name of Paul Splittorff, who was a mentor of mine. He passed away in 2011, Royals all-time wins leader, great broadcaster. And he says, can I give you some advice? I said, of course. He said, you're getting bent out of shape about the losses. There are a lot of people that are paid a lot of money to lose sleep over the losses, and you're not one of them. And in the moment, I thought, what is he telling me not to care? I was still wired like a sports fan. And I came to understand why he was never grumpy after losses, and a couple of our other broadcasters weren't grumpy after losses. And I came to understand that there was just so much more, and there had to be to survive than just the wins and losses. So I'll take you back to last year. I get on the bus after a bad loss. Royals captain Salvador Perez, possible future Hall of Famer, a guy I've covered longer than any player in my career. Big, giant personality, guy from Venezuela. And he had a bad game, 0 for 4 strikeouts. I sit on the second row of the bus because I know that if he were to get on, and there's different buses after the game here in Texas, that he's going to want the front row. He's the captain. You just know these things. And I'm on the phone with my son, and he gets on, and I go, hey, let me call you back because I don't want to be disrespectful after this loss. He sits right in front of me. I put my AirPods in. I'm minding my own business. He turns around. He taps me in the chest. He pokes me in the chest. I pull out my AirPods. He goes, Joel. I go, what's up? He goes, with a big smile, when's the last time I struck out 4 times in a game? And I'm like, I was trying to avoid that topic. And he goes, why? It's just a game. We get to play again tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he was doing that to show me that there was no panic, or there was a young player across the aisle, if he was trying to show him how to handle failure. But that's the biggest lesson I've learned from all of this, is that this is a sport of failure, and there's so many lessons to learn in it. And I'm the one that gets to share that story and all the other stories. And as long as those stories exist, and they always will, win or lose, no matter what it is, I get to do what I do.
I love that. And I just, it's been a pleasure even to get little glimpses into how you tell stories of players. And when you talk about relationships, it's obvious to me in the way that you speak love and heart into the stories of every human that you talk about, right? The interactions with them, the impact that you've had with them, that they have with you. And I think that's what makes you so relatable in so many ways. I think these first 2 books were probably because you needed to. I think your next book is going to be because you want to. And I don't know, I'm thinking it's going to be something titled like Beyond the Game, or The Real Game Beyond the Game, or something like that actually brings all these life lessons that you distill from the game into relatable examples for other people. Joel, I've so much appreciated this discussion and getting to know you better, and your vulnerability and transparency in your own stories. If you were to sit here today and describe what is a story that you're telling yourself that you want to rewrite, what is it?
I don't want to rewrite anything per se. I think I just want to reframe the mindset, because I think we all have that something in us, the way the brains are wired, to tell us either we can't or it's something that it's not. And that there's more there than what we oftentimes realize if you're paying attention to it, and you ignore that negative. And so I say that just because I don't know if it's rewriting as much as embracing the writing that's going on, like just the way the kids say it now, embracing the journey, right? Like enjoy those moments, enjoy all of this. And I find myself being more present in doing this, and yet still hung up every day on why am I not doing more? Why am I not doing this? Why am I not doing that? And just trying to trust that wherever this is going is a good place. It'll continue to be a good place, just as it has been a good place.
So what I'm hearing is that you're a human just trying to make sure that other humans can connect with other humans and see things for what they are, especially below whatever they're presented to be. Yeah. Right. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in all of this conversation. Joel, I'm grateful for you being here with us today. We're going to put the links to your books. I know Small Bald, Big Dreams just came out February 4th. I know that they've got 2 different places to tap into and learn from you. But what I'm going to encourage everybody to do is, outside of picking up the books and outside of however those can impact you, just look deeper into Joel. Joel tells stories in a way that really moves us all into action, and in a way that allows us to see ourselves in just about every story. It's about how do we make those stories accessible. And Joel, you did a lot of that for us today, and I just want to say thank you.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm certainly grateful for the friendship. And when I say the friendship, I mean, you and I don't know each other that well, but there's a bond. There's no question about it, and I hope we can continue to grow that. But also just really grateful for the depth of the questions and the trust that went both ways too. Because as a guy that's usually on the other side asking those questions, it's really cool to hear somebody digging deep and doing what you're doing. And the curiosity and the perceptiveness is a skill and a talent that you have. So thank you, Brian.
I fully receive that, brother. Thank you so much, especially coming from a pro like yourself. It means a lot. So, and for those of you who just watched Joel flip open his lid, right? It sometimes doesn't need to be a traumatic situation early in life or a poor upbringing for us to have a set of beliefs that we carry further into our lives and have those patterns repeat. But if we can see our lives as a mirror to our own experiences, oftentimes people do what they do with a deep level of passion because it's something they wish someone would have done for them. And so if you're going to be in a position to be able to build relationships and look deeper into those stories, it means sometimes you have to look deeper into yourself, to be honest and real with yourself, not only with where you started, but sometimes realizing that where you've been is exactly where you need to be, even if for years you've been fighting it. But the only way you get real freedom on the other side, and the only way that you allow yourself and others in your lives to be seen, is if you actually do ask questions to find your truth, their truth, and ultimately to surface truths. That's what story's all about, is truth, but truth for the sake of perspective. But it only happens if you flip open your lid and scan your can. We'll see y'all next time.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.